The old space station creaked and groaned, its metal walls echoing with sounds that shouldn't exist in the vacuum of space. Vera pressed herself against the cold wall of the maintenance shaft, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her pale blue skin, normally glowing with a soft light, was now dimmed to match the darkness around her. It was an ability that had kept her alive for the past 3 days, but she knew it wouldn't fool the hunters forever. She counted her breaths, just like her mother had taught her. In, out, in, out. Stay calm. Stay focused. The data crystal in her chest pocket felt heavy, a constant reminder of why she couldn't give up. It contained the locations of every Dark Swarm hive ship heading toward populated worlds. If she died here, billions would never know what was coming for them. A scratching sound from the ventilation shaft above made her freeze. The Dark Swarm drones were getting closer. Their insect-like bodies could squeeze through spaces even smaller than the maintenance shaft she was hiding in. Vera looked down at her leg, where a makeshift bandage covered the wound from her last encounter with them. The pain was getting worse, and she was running out of healing gel. The station's emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows through the grating. This section of the station still had power, but barely. Most of the systems had died years ago, when the human mining company abandoned it. Now it was just another piece of floating junk at the edge of Earth's solar system, exactly why she had chosen it as a hiding place. Vera checked her handheld scanner, the last piece of working technology she had from her scout ship. The screen showed 3 red dots moving 2 levels above her. The Dark Swarm hunters were searching in a pattern, methodically checking every space large enough to hide in. They were getting smarter, learning from each failed attempt to catch her. She thought about her crewmates, all 5 of them now dead. Their ship had been fast, but the Dark Swarm vessel was faster. Captain Land had ordered them to the escape pods, but only Vera's had made it away clean. She had watched through the pod's window as the others were caught in the Dark Swarm's energy nets, their pods pulled in like fish in a trawler's net. A distant bang made her jump. Something had entered the station's docking bay. Vera held her breath and checked the scanner again. This signal was different, larger, solid, not the scattered patterns of Dark Swarm tech. A ship. She zoomed out the scanner's range. Yes, definitely a ship, and not a Dark Swarm design. Hope flickered in her chest for a moment before reality crushed it. She couldn't risk contact with whoever it was. The Dark Swarm would kill them just for being near her. She had already lost too many friends to their ruthlessness. The maintenance shaft led to a junction ahead. Vera checked her mental map of the station. Left would take her toward the new ship, right would lead to the station's old medical bay. She had to choose quickly. The Dark Swarm would have detected the new arrival too. Right. She had to go right. The medical bay might have supplies for her leg, and it was further from the innocent visitor. She started crawling, trying to ignore the pain that shot through her leg with each movement. A metallic screech from behind made her heart stop. One of the drones had found the entrance to her maintenance shaft. She could hear its claws scraping against the metal as it pulled itself in. The sound of its chittering echoed through the narrow space. It was calling the others. Vera moved faster, no longer caring about the noise she made. The junction was just ahead, just a few more meters. The chittering got louder. She could almost feel the drone's cold presence behind her. She reached the junction and pulled herself around the corner just as a blast of energy scorched the spot where she had been. The drone had weapons. That was new. They were adapting, changing their tactics. As she scrambled down the right passage, one thought kept her moving. She had to survive. Not for herself, but for every world that didn't yet know they were in danger. For every species that still had a chance if they got warning in time. She was the last one left, the last one who could make their sacrifice mean something. And she wasn't going to let the Dark Swarm take that away. Jack Stone guided his salvage ship, the Lucky Break, into the abandoned station's docking bay. His scanner showed power readings from several sections, unusual for a station that was supposed to be dead. Even more unusual were the strange energy spikes his instruments had picked up. They didn't match any patterns he'd seen in 15 years of salvage work. "Well, this is different," he muttered, securing his helmet. The docking bay still had atmosphere, but he'd learned the hard way never to trust old station air. His boots clanked against the metal floor as he stepped out of his ship, the sound echoing through the empty bay. His helmet light swept across old shipping containers and forgotten equipment. Dollar signs flashed in his mind. Even outdated tech could fetch good prices in the outer colonies. But those weird energy readings worried him. They were coming from deeper in the station, and they were moving. A distant sound of metal hitting metal made him pause. Not the normal groans of an old station. This was different, like something was crawling through the walls. Jack pulled out his plasma cutter. It wasn't designed as a weapon, but it could cut through most things if needed. He'd modified it himself, like most of his tools. Out here, being handy with repairs was the difference between life and death. He followed his scanner down a corridor, moving quietly despite his heavy boots. The station's layout was familiar, standard mining company design from 30 years ago. He'd stripped similar stations dozens of times, but something felt wrong here. The dust on the floor showed recent tracks, and not from human boots. A scream echoed through the station, high-pitched and definitely not human. Jack's first instinct was to run back to his ship. That would be the smart thing to do. But the scream had sounded afraid, and if someone was in trouble, "I'm going to regret this," he sighed, turning toward the sound. The tracks led him to a maintenance junction. Fresh scoring marked the walls. Energy weapon damage, still hot. He'd seen plenty of weapons in his time, but nothing that left marks like these. More sounds came from ahead. Scratching, chittering noises that made his skin crawl, and the quick movements of someone running. He picked up his pace, following the sounds to the old medical bay. The door was half open, stuck in its track. Inside, he saw movement, something blue darting behind a medical cabinet. Then he saw what was chasing it. 3 creatures unlike anything he'd seen before crawled along the walls and ceiling. They looked like giant insects made of black metal and dark energy, each the size of a large dog. They were closing in on whatever was hiding behind the cabinet. Jack didn't think. He acted. His plasma cutter hummed to life, and he fired a burst at the nearest creature. The superheated plasma caught it in what looked like its head, melting through the metal-like surface. The creature fell with a screech that made his teeth hurt. The other 2 turned toward him, moving with terrifying speed. Jack dove behind an exam table as energy blasts struck where he'd been standing. He rolled, came up firing, and caught another creature mid-jump. It exploded in a shower of dark fragments. The last one was smarter. It skittered behind cover, firing shots that kept Jack pinned down. He needed a better angle. "Hey," he shouted to whatever was behind the cabinet. "If you can move, move now. I'll cover you." A figure darted out. A girl, but not human. Her blue skin gave off a faint glow, and her movements were too graceful for Earth gravity. She was clutching her leg, clearly injured. Jack laid down, covering fire with his plasma cutter, forcing the last creature back. "Over here. Quick." The alien girl reached him just as his plasma cutter's charge ran low. The creature behind them chittered. It sounded almost angry. "We need to move," Jack said. "My ship's in the main dock. Can you run?" The girl nodded, her solid white eyes meeting his through his helmet visor. "Yes. And thank you." "Thank me when we're out of here," Jack replied, feeling like his whole life had just taken a sharp turn into the unknown. "Stay close. I know these stations, but I'm guessing those things do too." The creature's chittering grew louder. More sounds answered from deeper in the station. Time to run. Jack led the way through the station's service corridors, keeping one eye on his scanner and the other on the injured alien girl. They'd lost the creatures 3 sections back, but he could still hear distant chittering echoing through the walls. His ship was 2 levels up, and every path there was a potential trap. They stopped in an old crew break room to catch their breath. Jack sealed the door and quickly checked the room's other exits while the alien girl sank into a chair, clutching her wounded leg. "I need to look at that leg," Jack said, pulling a first aid kit from his belt. "Those things might be gone for now, but you're leaving a trail of glowing blue drops behind us." The girl looked down, noticing for the first time that her blood actually did glow. "Oh, I forgot humans couldn't do that." She straightened in the chair. "I'm Vera, and I'm sorry you got involved in this. Those hunters weren't after you." "Yeah, I figured that out." Jack knelt beside her, examining the wound through her makeshift bandage. "I'm Jack, and since I am involved now, want to tell me what's really going on here?" Vyra winced as he cleaned the wound. Her blood glowed brighter when exposed to air, making it easier to see the deep gash. "Those creatures are called the Dark Swarm. They're hunting me because I know where they're going next." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal. Even through his helmet visor, Jack could see complex patterns swirling inside it. "This contains the movement patterns of their entire invasion fleet. My people discovered it, but her voice cracked. "We weren't strong enough to stop them." "Your people." Jack applied a pressure bandage, trying to stop the glow from seeping through. "The Starborn. We were peaceful, scientists and explorers." Vyra's white eyes seemed to look through the station's walls, seeing something far away. "We found the Dark Swarm's fleet by accident. They've already taken 12 worlds. Earth is on their path, though you probably have a few years before they arrive." Jack sat back on his heels, letting that sink in. "And those bug things chasing you. Hunter drones, they adapt to whatever they're fighting. That's why they had energy weapons. They learned them from my ship's defenses when they killed my crew." She looked at the bandage on her leg. What did you call it?" "Plasma cutter. That was new to them. That's why we got away." A bang from somewhere above made them both jump. Jack checked his scanner. Movement, but not close. "Not yet. The Dark Swarm are a hive mind." Vera continued, her voice lower. "Every drone we kill makes the others smarter. They learn from failure. And they never stop hunting once they've found a target." Jack thought about his ship. He could probably make it there alone. Could definitely outrun anything trying to follow him once he hit open space. That would be the smart play. But then he looked at Vyra again. At how young she seemed, yet how steady her voice was while talking about her dead crew. About her dead people. "That data crystal," he said. "Where were you planning to take it?" "Earth's defense forces. Your people need to know what's coming. Need time to prepare." She tried to stand but stumbled. Jack caught her arm. "But I can't ask you to help more than you already have. The Dark Swarm will kill anyone who helps me." Jack laughed, surprising them both. "Look, I've spent 15 years digging through space junk to make a living. Never did anything that actually mattered." He checked his plasma cutter's charge, half full. "Not great, but he'd worked with worse. Maybe it's time to try something new." Vera stared at him, her expression showing confusion even through alien features. "You want to help, even knowing what they'll do?" "Well, someone once told me humans are pretty strange." He grinned behind his helmet. "Besides, I know this station's systems. If those bugs want to play hide and seek, might as well use that." More sounds came from above, closer now. The hunter drones were working their way down. "So," Jack said, helping Vyra to her feet, "want to show a salvage pilot how to save the world." For the first time since he'd met her, Vera smiled. It lit up her face literally and figuratively. "I think we might make quite a team." Jack Stone. Above them, the hunters chittered. But this time, neither of them felt quite so afraid. The station's control room was a mess of dead screens and dusty control panels, but Jack moved through it like he'd worked there for years. His helmet light swept across old systems, while his hands quickly tested different controls. "Main power's dead," he said, "but the auxiliary systems are still running. That's why some sections still have lights and air." He pointed to a large display panel. Can you get that working? Your people were good with computers, right? Vira limped to the panel, her injured leg moving better thanks to Jack's first aid. She pressed her hand against the screen, and a soft blue glow spread from her fingers. We're not just good with computers. We can talk to them. The screen flickered to life, showing a map of the station. Jack whistled. Now that's a neat trick. The Dark Swarm are in these sections, Vera said, marking several areas in red. They're cutting off all paths to your ship. And she paused, her white eyes widening. There's something else. A signal. They're calling their main ship. How long? 2 hours, maybe less. Jack ran his hands through the station's maintenance logs. Okay, we can't fight them directly. Can't outrun them. But maybe. He pulled up schematics for the station's power grid. Maybe we can use the station itself. Vira watched as he traced power lines across the display. What are you thinking? These old mining stations, they had massive power requirements for the ore processing. Jack's fingers danced across the controls. The main reactor's dead, but the backup system still has charge. If we reroute it through the old processing units, we could overload them. Vera finished, catching on. Create a power surge through these sections. She pointed to where most of the hunter drones were gathered. Better than that. Jack pulled up another system diagram. See these coolant lines? They run through every major section. If we heat them up enough. Steam explosion. Vira's face lit up, literally glowing brighter with excitement. The Dark Swarm don't handle extreme temperature changes well. Their shells crack. They worked quickly, Jack's practical knowledge of station systems combining with Vera's ability to communicate directly with the computers. But every few minutes, the sounds of the hunter drones got closer. There's a problem, Vera said finally. Someone has to manually activate the coolant overrides. The controls here are too damaged. Jack checked his scanner. Red dots were moving in from multiple directions. Where are the override controls? Processing control, 2 levels down. Vera pointed to a spot on the map, right in the middle of where the hunters are gathering. Of course it is. Jack checked his plasma cutter's charge. How long would it take to set up the overload? 2 minutes to start it. Another minute to get clear. Vira's glow dimmed slightly. But the person doing it would be trapped. The hunters would reach them before they could escape. Jack was quiet for a moment, thinking. You said they learn from every encounter, right? Adapt to whatever they fight. Vera nodded. So they've probably figured out how to deal with my plasma cutter by now. But he grinned. They've never fought a human and a starborn working together, have they? What do you mean? Jack started pulling equipment from his salvage kit. Your people were peaceful, but you must have had some defensive technology. Ways to protect yourselves. Some. Vera held up her hand, making it glow brighter. We can channel energy through our bodies. Create light, heal, communicate with machines, but it's not very powerful. Maybe not alone. Jack held up some power cells from his kit. But what if we combined it with human technology? Something they've never seen before. Vira's eyes widened as she understood. A new weapon. Something they can't adapt to because it's never existed before. Exactly. Jack laid out the power cells and tools. I got some ideas, but I'll need your help. Think you can teach a salvage pilot about starborn tech in the next hour? More chittering echoed through the station. The hunters were getting closer. But for the first time since they'd met, both Jack and Vera were smiling. Let's show the Dark Swarm what happens when they push humans and starborn into a corner, Vera said, her glow brightening with determination. Jack nodded, already starting to work. They want to hunt us. Let's give them something to really worry about. The race against time had begun. Jack held up their finished creation, a combination of his plasma cutter's core and Vera's crystalline technology. The device pulsed with a strange blue-white light, power flowing between human technology and starborn crystal in ways neither was designed for. You're sure this will work? He asked, watching energy dance across the makeshift weapon's surface. No, Vera admitted, adjusting the final connections. But it's better than anything my people ever made alone. She looked up from her work, her white eyes meeting his through his helmet visor. The real question is who's going to use it. Jack checked his scanner again. The hunter drones had sealed off most paths to the processing control room. Their chittering had grown louder, more confident. They knew they had their prey trapped. "I'll go," they both said at the same time. "No," Jack shook his head. "You have to get that data crystal to Earth. That's the whole point of all this." Vira's glow flickered with emotion. "And you have to pilot your ship. I don't know how to fly it." "It's not that hard. I can teach you the basics in 5 minutes." Jack started to stand, but Vera grabbed his arm. "Jack, listen to me." Her voice was firm. "My people are gone. Most of them, anyway. I've already accepted that I might have to die to save others. But you have a whole life here. A future. A future." Jack laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Salvaging junk until I get too old or too slow. Besides, Earth is my home. If those things are coming for it, I should be the one to help stop them." A crash from nearby made them both jump. The hunters were getting closer. Vira's hand was still on Jack's arm. Her glow had spread slightly, creating a soft blue light around them both. "There's something I haven't told you," she said quietly, "about why the dark swarm hunt the way they do." Jack waited, watching her face. "They don't just learn from their fights. They absorb knowledge from those they kill. That's how they grow, how they understand new species." Her glow dimmed. "If they catch me, they'll learn everything about my people, our technology, our weaknesses. But if they catch you, they'll learn about humans," Jack finished, "about Earth's defenses." Vira nodded. "I can't let that happen. Not when my people's sacrifice could help save your world." She stood up straighter, even though her injured leg trembled. "That's why it has to be me." Jack looked at their makeshift weapon, then at the station schematic still glowing on the screen. A new idea started forming in his mind. "What if," he said slowly, "what if we're both thinking about this wrong?" Vira tilted her head, confused. "You said the dark swarm learned from every encounter. Adapt to whatever they fight." He pointed to their weapon. "So what if we give them too much to learn? Too many things happening at once?" Understanding dawned in Vera's eyes. "You mean we go together?" Jack's voice grew excited. "I know these stations inside and out. You can talk to the computers, control the power systems directly. If we coordinate, we could trigger the overload and still have a chance to escape." Vera finished. Her glow brightened. They wouldn't know which of us to focus on. More crashes came from the corridor outside. The hunter drones were almost there. "It's crazy," Vera said. "If we're even a few seconds off in our timing, then we die together." Jack checked the weapon one last time. "But at least we die trying something they've never seen before, something they can't adapt to because it's never existed. A human and a starborn, fighting as one." Vira was quiet for a moment. Then her glow steadied, growing stronger. "Together then." Jack handed her the weapon and pulled out his backup plasma torch. It wasn't much, but it would help create chaos. Ready to show these bugs what happens when they push two species into working together. Vira's answering smile lit up the room. "Lead the way, Jack Stone." The hunter drones burst through the door just as they slipped out the maintenance hatch. The real fight was about to begin. And this time, they weren't running. The maintenance tunnels echoed with the sounds of battle. Jack led the way through the darkness, his knowledge of the station's layout guiding them through the maze of passages. Behind him, Vera's natural glow provided just enough light to see by, while their makeshift weapon pulsed with its strange blue-white energy. "Left here," Jack whispered, checking his scanner. Red dots moved on multiple levels, but the largest cluster was exactly where they wanted them, near the processing control room. "They're following the pattern we set up." A chittering sound came from above. Vera fired their hybrid weapon without hesitation. The blast, part plasma, part starborn energy, caught a hunter drone as it dropped from a vent. The creature exploded in a shower of dark fragments and blue sparks. "They're not as fast to adapt as before," Vera said, her voice tight with concentration. The combined energy patterns confused them. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Jack checked his tablet showing the station's layout. Processing control is 1 level down, but the main group of hunters is right here, Vera finished, as chittering filled the air around them. Hunter drones poured from all 3 corridors, their black bodies flowing like liquid metal. But Jack and Vera were ready. They stood back to back, their weapons raised. "Remember the plan," Jack said, firing his plasma torch at the nearest drone. "We just need to keep them busy for 2 minutes." Vera's weapon sang with power as she fired, each shot creating explosions of mixed energy that the Dark Swarm couldn't predict or adapt to. "The station's power systems are ready. I can feel them through the walls." The fight became a dance. Jack's knowledge of the station let them use every pipe, every corner for cover. Vera's connection to the station's systems let her trigger doors and barriers at exactly the right moments. Together, they created chaos that even the hive mind couldn't process fast enough. A hunter drone got too close, its claws slashing at Jack's suit. But before it could strike, Vera's hand touched a nearby power conduit. Electricity arced through the metal floor, stunning the creature long enough for Jack to destroy it. 1 minute, Vera called out, her glow flickering with effort. "The power buildup is starting." The remaining hunters seemed to sense something was wrong. They pulled back, chittering in new patterns, learning, adapting, but confused by the mix of tactics they faced. "They're calling more drones," Vera said, reading the electronic signals in the air. "We need to reach the control room now." Jack fired his last plasma burst, creating a gap in the hunter's line. "This way." They ran for the maintenance shaft that led down, the hunters right behind them. Jack's boots hit the ladder first, and he slid down fast enough to make his gloves smoke. Vera followed, her injured leg almost giving out as she landed. The processing control room was just ahead. Its doors were sealed, but Vera pressed her hand to the panel, and they slid open. Inside, Jack shouted, "Quick!" They dove through the doorway as hunter drones filled the corridor behind them. Vera sealed the door with a burst of energy from her hand, fusing the mechanisms. 30 seconds, she gasped, limping to the main control panel. Her hands moved across it, channeling power through the station's systems. "The overload is building." Jack checked his scanner one last time. The red dots were all around them now, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The chittering had become a constant sound, like static in the air. "Ready for the last part?" he asked, pulling out the makeshift explosive charges they'd prepared. Vera nodded, her glow steady and bright. Together, together. They pressed their hands to the control panel, Vera channeling starborn energy, Jack activating his charges. The panel blazed with light as power surged through systems that hadn't been used in decades. The chittering outside reached a fever pitch. The door began to glow red as the hunters tried to burn through. 10 seconds, Vera called out. Jack grabbed her hand. "Whatever happens, it was worth it," she finished. The door burst open in a shower of molten metal. Hunter drones poured through, their black bodies merging into a wave of darkness. But they were too late. The station screamed as power surged through its veins. And in that moment, human ingenuity and starborn technology created something the Dark Swarm had never seen before. Something they couldn't adapt to. Light filled the world. The explosion ripped through the station like a newborn star. Steam burst from overloaded coolant pipes, turning corridors into deadly blast chambers. Power surged through every conduit, creating a web of lightning that consumed the hunter drones in its path. Their chittering turned to screeches, then to silence. In the processing control room, Jack and Vera huddled behind an overturned console, his salvage suit's shield strained against the heat and energy, while her natural starborn defenses created a bubble of safety around them both. Did it work? Jack shouted over the sound of metal tearing itself apart. Vera pressed her hand to a still-functioning panel, her glow pulsing as she connected with the station's dying systems. The hunters, I can't sense them anymore. The energy overload disrupted their hive connection. A deep groan echoed through the station. Jack's scanner was flashing red warnings everywhere. This whole place is coming apart. We need to move. They ran through corridors filled with steam and electrical discharges, past the broken remains of hunter drones. Vera's leg wound had reopened, leaving a trail of glowing drops, but she kept pace with Jack. His knowledge of the station's layout was their only hope now. The main path to the dock is blocked, he said, checking his tablet. We'll have to go through the cargo tunnels. Jack, Vera's voice was urgent. The Dark Swarm ship is almost here. I can feel its signal getting stronger. They reached a cargo lift, its emergency power barely functioning. Jack forced the doors open, and they jumped inside. The lift groaned as it carried them up, pieces of the shaft falling around them. How long until it arrives? Minutes. Maybe less. Vera clutched the data crystal in her pocket. Even if we reach your ship, we'll make it, Jack said firmly. Trust me one more time. The lift reached the docking level with a shudder. They could see the lucky break ahead, still secured where Jack had left it. But between them and the ship, the station's hull was beginning to crack. Space was visible through growing tears in the metal. Run. Jack grabbed Vera's hand. They sprinted across the buckling deck plates, magnetic boots keeping them from floating away as air rushed past them into space. They reached the ship just as a massive shape appeared in the starfield beyond the station. The Dark Swarm vessel emerged from the darkness like a nightmare made real, its black surface seeming to absorb light itself. Jack threw himself into the pilot's seat while Vera sealed the airlock. The Lucky Break's engines roared to life. Hold on, he called out. This is going to be close. The ship broke free from its docking clamps just as energy beams from the Dark Swarm vessel struck the station. But Jack was ready. He'd spent 15 years flying through debris fields and asteroid belts. This was what he lived for. The Lucky Break danced through the expanding cloud of station debris, each piece providing cover from the Dark Swarm's weapons. Jack's hands flew across the controls, using moves that would have torn a lesser ship apart. They're launching fighters, Vera called from the sensor station. Not for long. Jack grinned and pulled a lever. The debris from the station, now burning with residual energy from their overload, created a barrier of chaos behind them. The Dark Swarm fighters, trying to adapt to too many threats at once, couldn't navigate through it. The Lucky Break shot past the last pieces of debris, its engines straining as Jack pushed them to full power. The Dark Swarm ship grew smaller behind them. They're not following, Vera said finally. The debris field, it's interfering with their tracking systems. Jack set the course for Earth, then engaged the autopilot. Only then did he let himself breathe. We did it. Vera looked at the data crystal in her hand, then at the human who had risked everything to help her. We did more than that. We proved something the Dark Swarm never expected. What's that? That different species working together can create something entirely new, something stronger. She smiled, her glow brightening the cabin. My people tried to fight them alone. Your people would have too. But together we've got a real chance. Jack nodded toward the crystal. Ready to go warn Earth about what's coming. Ready. Vera's hand found his. And this time, they won't just face humans, or just face the Starborn. They'll face both of us, Jack finished. Together. The Lucky Break sped toward Earth, carrying with it both a warning and a hope. A hope born from the unlikely alliance of a human salvage pilot and an alien refugee, who had proved that the greatest strength comes not from fighting alone, but from standing together against the darkness. Behind them, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter.